Welcome back to Liquid Carnage. This is Jason.
I'm Scott.
Hey, long time no see, buddy. It's
It's been a minute. Well, life does happen. We are very busy people. A lot of people do not realize that you are a very popular man here in town. Some might call you Kingman Famous.
Oh yeah, Kingman Famous. Okay, there we go. Yes, I'm a celebrity. You're a celebrity. We're both gonna be celebrities, big time.
I don't think I'm a celebrity, but you, my friend, for those that don't know, Jason starred as Scrooge in the community theater play of Scrooge during the holiday season this year. So it is not unlike it. It happens all the time. We could be at Chipotle, Chili's, whatever restaurant in town, and a little kid always comes up and asks for Mr. Scrooge's autograph.
They do, yeah. I always love the look on their face when they look at me and their parents say, "Oh, that was Scrooge in the play," and they'll give me that wide-eyed, "No,
it is surreal.
I'm not as old. He's older."
Yeah, it is. It is funny, man. So you did a good job with that. Thanks, so it's kind of cool.
I actually had a friend of ours who went for a job interview, and it's funny with job interviews too because they're an acquired skill set.
They are. It's a very not everyone does well at job interviews.
No, not at all.
Some people feel like they ace them. Some people just have they clam up during them. It's
how are you as a job interviewer?
I like as an interviewer,
as the interviewee. Excuse me.
I like to think that I'm solid. I make sure that I know what I'm going to talk about. I have my points when I go in there, and I speak clear and I speak assertively.
Okay, so one of the big things that this person has had struggles with is that he's a good worker, but just cannot communicate that in an interview. And I always wonder, because I find it I'm almost relaxed in an interview. I don't even thread it. I don't worry about it. I seem to do pretty well. Even if I don't get the job, it's always because someone is more qualified than I am.
Yeah, I think I've got the same same viewpoint as you do. I don't mind going in and talking to anybody in an interview, and I just myself and.
Well, and his problem is that he's a very smart worker, but just cannot communicate it. Yeah. So what do you think the hardest thing about interviewing is for people who are like him, where they just can't seem to communicate themselves to their interviewer?
I think it's nerves, to be honest with you.
So you think the toughest part about the interview is nerves?
I think so. I think nerves. If you overthink anything or if you're just not sure, you have to have confidence going into any kind of job interview. If they're calling you to come in and talk, they like what they've seen on paper. You have to sell them at that point. You have to go in there and make sure that when you're done talking to them, you're the only person they think that can do this job and do this job the way they want it done.
Well, and his problem is that when you ask the question, tell me a little bit about yourself, and you can't decide what you want to say, or you want to talk about how you lived with your parents for 2 years and they went off on vacation one time and left you home alone. That's not good. That's good.
Rough. That's rough. And, I think when you walk into a job interview, you have to do your homework.
Okay.
And you have to be ready to talk about your past job histories. And when they say, ask me about yourself, don't talk about your parents and their vacation. They want to know about your professional career, your careers. Where did you go to school? How did you get into this job field?
Well, and that's the thing is how you're trying to. It's like a first date.
Absolutely.
You're trying to have a first date with someone, and if someone said, "Hey, how are you doing today?" and you talk about your mother, the girl's probably not going to ask you out on a second date because you need to be told to be on a second date. That's the problem.
Well, the nice thing is if the girl's asked you out, your job's a whole lot easier as a male. So that's a different topic for a different day.
That's true. That is true. So he I don't know if he got the job or not. So at this point, I'm going to assume that when we've talked to him, his skills are not quite the best.
They are not there for the interview. For the job itself, I think it's on point. I think he can do the job. I think he can do the job well, but I'm not sure he was able to translate that.
When was the last time you interviewed for him?
Oh, man. It's been about 2 or 3 years.
Okay. So
I guess, hold on. A phone interview or in person?
Well, I think let's keep it as in person because phone interviews are really easy.
Yeah.
Because you're not facing the person. You don't have to see their face. They don't have to see your face. You still have to have some of the interviewing skills, but you don't necessarily have to be nervous if they're really, really ugly or if they're really, good looking. All those things that seeing someone face to face can make a difference.
Yeah. It's probably been about 2 or 3 years for me.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
It was the first time in about 5 or 6 years I've had to interview for a job too. So, you have to always be ready and always be ready to answer everything about that field. Because the job interview I was sitting in, was a completely different field than what I'm in right now. So I had to do my homework. I had to prepare. I had to find people in that field and ask them questions. And even though I didn't know all the answers, make that audience believe I could at least get the answers and I could learn.
Yeah.
Which I could. But, the trick is making them believe you can.
How do you convince someone who doesn't know you other than a piece of paper and you have the skill sets to reach that?
And in all reality, it does come down to sales.
Okay.
Everything in life comes down to sales one way or the other. You're always going to have to sell yourself at some point. Because if you can't sell yourself, especially in a job interview, how are you going to get by in life?
Well, and how do you sell yourself to other people? Because I look at this individual. He's very cordial. He's great with people. He doesn't ever have a problem socially or he doesn't have any fears when he talks to normal people. But why sitting in an interview, he freezes up or doesn't? Maybe it's it's just being interviewed in general. It's
stage fright. Okay. We all get that on some level. Yeah. We don't set out to get stage fright, but sometimes there's that one question, even if it's as simple as tell me about yourself, that makes the person freeze. It's not that you don't know the answer. It's just that, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, what do I say here? Because I'll admit freely, there's times that I've done this, or I've sat in a job interview and I've stumbled over my words, or I've gone on way too long about something that I shouldn't have, and that cost me the job.
Yeah, that's hard. So I believe that they have all kinds of websites that talk about interviews and talk about what the skill sets are, and one of the big ones is practice interviewing. So how do you practice interviewing? That's a tough one right there,
right?
Because you have to sit there and practice, make up questions you think they might ask you. How would you go about, if I said practice interviewing, how would you go about practicing that?
I'd have to go find a friend or a colleague that is in a management position that does interviews on a regular basis, and I'd have to ask them to help me. Like, what questions do you ask? What questions should you expect to be asked? As an interviewer and from an interviewee standpoint. What should I expect to say here, and what answers are you looking for? Are there buzzwords? Are there key things that you need to know as the interviewer that I need to say?
Well, and we're talking to everyone right now at Liquid Carnage, and frankly, if Trump is talking about 25 million new jobs, people, they're going to be interviewing you. So this is
as long as the economy
one
holds.
that I know we're talking about it in the premise of our bar, but but it's going to be something that everyone's going to have to run into. So.
Well, even applying for a job as a bartender or a waitress or a waiter, you still have to pass the interview. You still have to convince that bar manager why you're worth it for him to hire you,
Yeah.
And that says a lot.
Yeah. So here are some ways, 10 tips to improve interview performance. And we can talk about them. So it says practice good nonverbal communication. So I assume what they're saying there is that if we're having an interview and I say, tell me about yourself, and you've rambled on for 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and I'm sitting there like bored out of my mind, you need to be aware of that.
Oh, yeah.
You need to be aware of that. Are you good at reading nonverbal communication?
Exactly.
See, I'm really not very good at reading nonverbal communication because I flip people off and they see it.
Yeah,
so I'm not saying anything, but I'm saying something.
That middle finger never goes down,
exactly.
for you, which is hilarious on so many levels. But I think in this context, what they're talking about is nonverbal communication is, as their interviewee, stand up straight. Sit up straight. Dress for the job you want. So I don't care if you're going to work for Burger King. Put a shirt and tie on. Tuck your tuck your shirt in. Iron everything.
Okay.
Make yourself look presentable and make eye contact.
This is what it says. It's about demonstrating confidence, standing straight, making eye contact, and connecting with a firm handshake. The first nonverbal impression can be a great beginning or quick ending to your interview. So
nailed
Scott,
that one.
see, look at you, buddy.
You nailed that one.
Okay. The second one: dress for the job or company.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so have you ever done an interview?
Have I ever interviewed anybody? Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Okay. Well, one of my first interviews when I was recently married, I just had a new baby. I was in Seattle, Washington, working at the Boeing company, and I decided I wanted to try to look at other places. I went to a small internet company at the time who was hiring for someone who was going to be like a manager of a warehouse. Mm-hmm. They were a small company, but they were kind of becoming a little bit more noticeable, known.
And that company was called Amazon.
And that company was called Amazon at the time. And I didn't really know much about it. I read that their owner had just become a billionaire. He was worth $1 billion.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, great job. Great job.
And yet we're here in my front bedroom.
Bezos.
Yeah, we're here in my front bedroom recording a podcast because you couldn't take a job.
So anyways, though, I'm interviewing. I'm dressed in a shirt, tie, suit. The kid that walks in is probably 5 years younger than I am. He's wearing khaki shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops. Now, I'm thinking probably not appropriate to dress this way for an interview.
Absolutely.
And he's probably now one of the richest men in the world, because when I was doing the interview, they said, we really can't pay a lot of money up front, but we'll give you stock options to come work for us. And at the time, with a young child, and I said, no, I can't work for stock options.
Ugh.
So who was the dipshit, and he was not dressed for the interview, but I was.
Yeah.
So I should have come dressed in flip-flops and khakis. I probably would have got the job.
Absolutely. No, I do have to ask. I was just joking when I said Amazon. Did that company actually turn into something big, or?
They eventually have they added a service called Prime that really escalated their business, and they are now pretty big.
Oh wow.
They're in fact they're competing against Walmart right now.
Oh, good for
I don't know
them.
if you've ever heard of them, Bo. If you have, everyone, if you haven't heard of Amazon, it's a great company. It's been around about 20 years.
What's the website?
I think it's www.amazon.com. I think is what it is.
I'll have to check that out.
If you want to buy some things from them, or you want some music or movies, or they have a great website. They have a really great program called Amazon Prime. It's really, really good. Now they're even venturing into like TV shows and movies and stuff.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so they're doing really good. They're doing pretty good.
Man, I
They're
bet you're
doing
kicking
pretty
yourself now, huh?
Oh boy, yeah. I could have been Jason Edgeworth saying, I'll just
Whatever.
fly around. What do I need to work for?
Man.
Today's casual dress codes do not give you permission to dress as they do when you interview. It is important to know what to wear to an interview and to be well groomed.
And that goes back to what I said. You have to wear the shirt and tie. Make yourself look presentable. When you get the job, if they say you can wear something else, by all means, you can apply. You can apply the company dress code to yourself. But until you get that job, you dress for the job you want.
Now, I don't know if many of our listeners will be in this situation, but what if I don't have a suit and tie?
At least a shirt and tie.
What if I don't have a shirt and tie? Like, we have some people in our little town that probably do not own a suit.
I would suggest Ross always has deals.
Okay, Ross.
And there's no shame in trying at the Goodwill or the thrift stores. People turn that stuff in all the time.
Yeah.
Donate it all the time. And if you can find it that fits and it's clean and it looks good, hey, man, as long as you're not wearing a leisure suit, who cares?
That's true. So, I agree with you, because at this point, if you need a job, you have to have a suit, or you have to have at least a shirt and tie. You have to have a shirt and tie.
It's so many things in life I've realized as I've gotten older is that you have to be able to check your ego at the door. And these are one of those moments when you're trying to get the job you want. If you don't have it and you can't necessarily afford it, there's no shame in going to a place that you can get it cheap.
What's that line that don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Right.
I could not agree with that more.
All right. Okay, third way to improve your interview skills: listen to a question, listen to it. From the very beginning of an interview, your interviewer is giving you information, either directly or indirectly. If you are not hearing it, you are missing a major opportunity. Good communication skills include listening and letting the person know you heard what he said. Observe your interviewer and match that style and pace. So that must mean that if he's a real fast talker and wants to go through an interview like this, you should, hey, here's who I am and what I want.
Is that what that means, though?
I don't know.
I don't think that's what that means.
Okay.
That does not mean what I think it means.
What do you think listening means in an interview?
I think you have to listen to what the interview's saying. Mm-hmm. Take a second, process it, and answer it thoughtfully. Don't just spit out the answer. A thoughtful answer goes so much further.
And maybe that's where we get back to listening to the question, because I know that there are people's where they get asked the question and then they don't answer that question. Now, part of it could be because maybe they don't have the experience and so they don't know how to answer that question. Mm-hmm. For example, tell me an example of a situation where you had to fire an employee. Now, if you've never been a supervisor to fire an employee, you really can't answer and listen to that question. But it also must say be engaged with the interview.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Be involved at the interview because part of the interview is also to get a feel what kind of personality you have and what kind of personality the manager is going to have, and balancing those two things. Without listening, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is a lot of people don't realize that getting the interview, once you get the interview, the hard part's done. Realistically. And I say that because everyone starts off on the same foot. You apply for the job with the same application or a resume. And when you have that resume, whoever's hiring looks at that, reads it, and decides if they want to see you or not. And if they call, that's the first step. It's up to you to take that next step and impress them enough to where they want you back for either another interview or they want to offer you the job.
I couldn't agree more. And I just find it interesting because I've always interviewed well. I don't know why. I mean, I've talked to people after my interviews. I said, because one of the questions I always ask at the end of the interview is how do I compare to other candidates?
That's a great question.
To see, where am I at? Because sometimes an interviewer can be done within 15 minutes, say you're not the right person. Mm-hmm. So I've always been humble enough to be able to say, I know I'm not perfect. And I know I can do better. So tell me what areas I can improve on. Now, a lot of times they say, well, you're fine. Or I've had one actually say, in my opinion, I need someone who's a little bit more detail-oriented. This job really requires someone who's dots the I's and crosses the T's. And I feel like your weakness, being that you're not a very detailed person, would make you fail at this job.
That's a fair assessment.
Now, after I picked myself off the floor from crying, slapped him around a little bit, I felt better that at least I got the answer I was looking for.
Well, that's true. I mean, at least he was honest with you.
He was. And that's the big thing too, is that they can be honest with you about your skills and the assessment of those skills. That'll help, especially in the future, because we're not going to get the first job we interview for. That's a fact. So if you keep practicing and you get better, the better.
I've often gone with the thought process of, if you get offered an interview, whether you want the job or not, you should take it. Really? It's always practice.
Really?
It's practice. You can try different things, per se, for interview skills and whatnot. If you want to interview for the job that you didn't necessarily want, but you figure, what the hell, I'll throw my application in the ring, and if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I'm not hurting.
Yeah.
Or if someone finds you on, we'll say, Monster or those other internet, resume companies, it never hurts to talk. It never hurts to practice. You can hone your skills that way.
Some people just have a real tough time talking.
Yeah.
You get anxiety about it, like our friend. Number 4, don't talk too much.
That's my problem.
I have that same problem.
I have talked myself in and out of jobs for that reason.
And there's a balance, because you have to answer a question. So what is the balance? Maybe that's where you have to look at those nonverbal cues from the interviewer. If you're boring someone, then you got to stop talking. Telling the interviewer more than he needs to know could be a fatal mistake. When you have not prepared ahead of time, you may ramble when answering interview questions, sometimes talking yourself right out of a job.
I've watched that happen.
By reading through the job posting, matching your skills with the position's requirements, and relating only that information. And when you tell me that you live with your parents and they went on a vacation one time and left you alone at the house alone,
that means nothing to this job. Why are you telling me this?
Yeah, exactly. And it probably talked your way out of a job. Probably.
I would say, it's.
Well,
I'm speechless with that.
Well, and it happens. So don't talk too much. It's hard too, because if you don't practice, then your intentions of talking about something, you don't know where there's a start, a middle, and an end to your answer to a question.
And, the funny thing is in my other life, not as a podcaster, but what I do for a living, I've had to interview people for jobs before. The guy that works for me now, I interviewed 5 or 6 people before. I settled on him, and there were some interviews where I was done within 2 minutes of the interview starting, because they answered wrong, they put off the wrong vibe, they just did not present themselves well.
Okay, well, number 4, don't talk too much. Number 5, don't be too familiar.
Oh yeah.
Hey pal, what's up, baby?
Yeah.
The interview is a professional meeting to talk business. This is not about making a new friend. Your level of familiarity should mimic the interviewer's demeanor. It is important to bring energy and enthusiasm to the interview and to ask questions, but do not overstep your place as a candidate looking for a job.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dude, you got some weed, man.
Yeah, come on, man. What's gonna happen here? Let's hit this bong before we start this interview.
And obviously, these things are coming up because people do it. That's the
the
worst
problem.
part. You know
that's
what I mean?
the problem. I mean, there's people out there doing this stuff. And
those warnings they put on bags, don't put it over your head, you might die.
It's because someone did it. Someone did it. Someone did it. Yeah, I agree. And that's what That's what hurts the most, is that there's people out there dumb enough to be doing that.
Yeah. Use appropriate language. It's a given that you should use professional language during the interview.
Yo, what
Be
up,
aware
dog?
of any inappropriate slang words or references to age, race, religion, politics, or sexual orientation. These topics could send you out the door very quickly.
You want a simple.
How many black people work in this place?
you want a simple answer to that? Use proper grammar. Use proper English.
That's a tough one.
Do not use slang. I know it's tough. Now, I know kids.
Like, how do you teach someone who has never really had a formal education or remembered those slangs or, double meaning words or bad grammar. How do you train that? How do you learn that?
How do you teach the kids not to, or
how do you teach someone? Because I mean, I'm assuming that there's going to be some people out who are listening to this podcast who probably have never thought about grammar as a real priority, and they never needed grammar. So how do you teach someone, or how would you advise someone to learn grammar?
Besides going to school, community college, or
okay, once again, we're talking about people 18 to 25 to 30.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you know what I mean? They're already out of high school. They they're not like they're in high school right now.
So
how do you advise someone? So I mean, you're talking to someone out there, John Smith, who is not doing well with his interviews and maybe wants to glean something from this podcast. How would you tell them, or how would you advise them?
Research.
Okay.
Ask. It goes back to asking people that that are in similar management positions, or an adult.
You didn't listen to my question. See that you already filed number 3.
I did listen. I did listen. You are not letting me finish my answer.
No.
How do they glean proper grammar from this?
How do you ask someone? Teach me proper grammar, Scott.
You want me to teach you proper grammar?
That's what you said. Ask someone.
Ask someone
to teach you proper grammar.
Ask someone that you know is going to have all the proper answers for you.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And let's move on. We will agree to disagree on this area that you did not answer the question.
I answered the question. Did we walk into a courtroom in here?
How do you teach someone better grammar? Ask someone.
Ask someone who
Scott,
knows.
Teach me
Ask someone. What kind of grammar do you know? Are you doing it right? Well, that comes down to the job. Are they going to give you a writing test? Do you have to do a lot of writing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we started this by saying using appropriate language, and you said having proper grammar.
Grammar goes into it too.
Okay, so, and I asked, well, some of our people probably may, hopefully most of them do, but some of them may not know that. So if we were going to advise them on how to improve their grammar,
I would say
asking someone to teach them better grammar may not be an option.
Well, understand who you're asking, though.
There we go.
Understand.
I think it comes back to practicing your questions.
Know your audience.
Yeah.
Know who you want to mentor you.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're going to have a mentor, and I strongly suggest any young person listening that if you don't have a mentor, find someone that you look up to that's a little bit older or in a field that you want to get into, and ask them questions, pick their brains, find out how they got to that position that they're in.
I do agree with that statement. So we're back on track that we agree with each other, because there's nothing wrong with asking a question. I think anyone who goes in thinking that they don't need to ask questions to become better as an interviewer, you're missing an opportunity, because there are a lot of people who can interview very well, and put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
Don't be cocky.
Ooh,
Attitude plays a key role in your interview success. There is a fine line between confidence, professionalism, and modesty. Even if you're putting on a performance to demonstrate your ability, overconfidence is as bad, if not worse, as being too reserved.
Always be modest.
Well,
always.
And I think that there's probably a way that you can have an internal confidence, cockiness, but you don't have to express it outwardly.
I agree. I think, when I say always be modest, it comes to being humble too. You have to know how to properly put things that you're proud of doing in a way that make you.
I think it's interesting when someone goes in and do an interview and says, "What are your 5-year goals?" And they say, "My goal is to be you in 5 years."
Right.
Wait, so I'm hiring you to replace me.
Like,
okay.
I respect the drive on some levels, but other levels, I don't know.
A little overconfident, a little over cocky.
Yeah, but going back to being modest, just you be able to state your goals that you want in a modest way, and state what you've done in a modest way. You don't have to say, hey man, I went out, I cut our budget by like 15%. That's so awesome. My boss gave me a 30% raise because there was some BS like that.
Well, and you can have inner confidence. You ever see that movie Birdcage?
Oh yeah.
Where he goes, you can be Marsha Graham, or Madonna, but you keep it all inside. That's the same thing. I'm overconfident, but I keep it all inside.
Yeah, it does not matter. Just keep it inside.
Take care to answer the questions. When interviewers ask for an example of a time when you did something, they are asking behavioral interview questions, which are designed to elicit a sample of your past behavior. If you fail to relate a specific example, you not only don't answer the question, but you also miss an opportunity to prove your ability and talk about your skills.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing, that interviewing is not an easy thing. It's a tough thing.
By any means, no. It's not easy, no.
And practicing it and getting it comfortable in your own skin where you know, because sometimes you do have to think quickly on your feet. You get asked a question that you have no experience in. You have to, I don't have any experience of that, but I've done something similar by doing this, and practice that and get that out there.
It comes down to you know yourself the best. Know what you've done. Know where you've been. And you're right. Know how to be able to translate that into whatever you're interviewing for. You're not going to be a construction worker interviewing for a job in a law office.
Yeah.
Well, normally
not.
Circumstances change, but
yeah.
But just in case you do apply for that job in the lawyer office, whatever questions they might ask you about the construction field, be able to relate that to the legal field,
if you can,
or that office if you can.
And frankly, if you have that memorized before you even get in there, and you have an idea of what that means, that will obviously be easier, better to answer the question.
And the other side of it too is just because the industries might change, but office work is still office work for the most part. If you know how to work a computer, if you have the basic skill sets you need to operate as someone in an office setting, filling out paperwork, I cut that part out. Brain locked that. Sorry.
So definitely want to block that out, get that out of there. It's always a better thing. You have to practice that. You have to make sure that when you answer the question, you answer it as best you can to relate it to your own experience. And there's going to be times where you can't. I mean, there's just some things that we've never done before. And maybe that makes us a bad candidate. But a lot of times, if we bridge it over into something we do have experience with, then all the better.
And if you don't know, it's better. You're better off telling them you don't know.
Yes.
It never hurts to say that you're willing to learn and you're an aggressive learner and you want to do everything you can to learn the job. But if you don't know and you can't relate it to something that's similar, don't fake it.
That's right.
Because when you fake it, if you happen to get that job and you walk in there like, oh, yeah, remember how I told you I was able to do this? Yeah, I was just lying to get to the job. I have no idea how we're going to do this. That does not make you look good, and it does not make you long for this company.
Number 9, ask questions. When asked if they have any questions, most candidates answer no. Wrong answer. Part of knowing how to interview is being ready to ask questions that demonstrate interest in what goes on in the company. Asking questions also gives you the opportunity to find out if this is the right place for you. The best questions come from listening to what you were asked during the interview and then asking for additional information. Have you ever, when at the end when they said, "Do you have any questions for us?" Have you ever said no?
A couple times. In my younger days.
Younger days, yeah. When I graduated college, one of the things that they made every single graduating senior do is go to a resume writing class and an interview class. I think it was only a couple hours, but everyone had to. It wasn't a credited class. It was just a seminar kind of thing. And they said from the very beginning, when you go in for an interview, have questions ready. And even if they're global questions, tell me about the future of where your business is going.
Where do you see this job growing into, or what do you see this job growing into? Like how are the advancement opportunities in this company?
Right.
You're right. Just global questions that make the interviewer think you're engaged.
Or listening to what their answers were, what some of their discussion points were, and making a mental note. I firmly recommend that when you're in an interview, have a piece of paper and a pen. So if you have a question, you can write it down and then carry it forward when the ask questions come up at the end.
Could not agree more.
And finally, don't appear desperate. When you interview with a please hire me approach, you appear desperate and less confident. Reflect the 3 C's during the interview: cool, calm, and confidence. You know you can do the job. Make sure the interviewer believes you can too.
It seems like number 10 applies to everything in life, from dating to job interviewing. Don't be desperate. Desperation has a stench to it. We've talked about this before. We talked about
this in one of the Liquid Carnages. I think we were talking about dating or something.
Even in dating,
a girl coming up to you and talking to you, and if they sense desperation, it's bad.
Desperation. It doesn't matter if you're dating or in the job world. It has a stench to it. It has an aura. Yeah. If you're desperate and you're showing off you're desperate, people can tell, and it puts them off.
Yeah.
It's almost like a funk. It's a non-scented funk.
And isn't it amazing that our radars in life Our radars are attuned to be able to read those nonverbal communications that come from people with no confidence or people who are overconfident. We've met those people too, where you can just tell they think they're the best person alive.
And then there's ones that are overcompensating for their shortcomings too.
And some people, can never allow themselves to show weakness because they don't ever want someone to think that they're weak, even though in reality, all of us have weaknesses. All of us have things that we're not proud of. Okay, if we were going to sign off and give 3 ideas or 3 things that we would want to tell people to glean from this as important things to do in an interview, what would you tell them?
Be confident and do your research. Dress for the job you want. I don't care if they're wearing khakis and flip-flops. You wear a shirt and tie. Make sure you look professional. And the third one, be yourself. Don't portray to be someone that you're not. Be you. If you're going to get this job, it's going to be based on your merit and what you've done, not the person you want them to think you are.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good. I would say the same thing. Practice. Treat it as if you were brushing your teeth every day or doing something else. You should be so comfortable with answering questions, even if you're not a person that likes to speak in front of other people. If you practice, that will definitely help. 2, and one thing that I always look at is do research on the company. Find out a little bit. Go on. I mean, we have internet now. We can look at people on the internet and find out about a company, how big they are, what their goals are. Maybe you can do research on, maybe a new thing that they're trying to do, or if you're trying to go for a small firm, try to do something on the industry they're in. Look up the industry. Try to get some information. Third thing that I always adhere to as well is at some point you do have to give a little bit of yourself. Even if you are nervous, it's okay to show them, hey, I'm a person. I have weaknesses. I have strengths. I am a person. I see people get so caught up in I have to be a perfectly polished candidate or they're never going to hire me. I look at trying to be an open person that they can relate to, because ultimately, if you can relate to someone, it's very much easier for you to hire them if you can relate to them. If you can't relate to someone, I don't care how qualified of a person you are, you're not going to get hired.
No,
period.
I agree completely. I think it's important.
Wow, it's not really a good bar topic, but thanks, man. We got some legs on that one.
I think this is evolution. It's not always about bar stuff with us. Sometimes it's about the real stuff in life.
Well, and this just happened with our friend. I mean, so if you're listening out there, friend, we love you. Maybe you can glean something from this as well. As the dogs say, it's time for us to head out. So I'm Jason.
I'm Scott.
And always remember, if you don't know what to say, drink some liquid carnage. Take care.